Well, greetings. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in to hear me talk and listen to me, my thoughts on things, and yeah. Today I have a really different one. I haven't done anything like this before, so please bear with me if it's a bit jumbled or it's all over the shop. I do apologize in advance. I promise I will get better at this. I have been wanting to talk about films for a while now, and I think it's important to show, not you just who I am, but also different facets of me. And of course, I, just like you, am interested probably in film and movies and television and stories. I'm very philosophical, and I have a lot of interest in metaphors, morals, things like that, allegories. Yeah. And I've been wanting to talk about some of my favorite films for a while. So I know this is a very veering off the course of my channel, but I just feel like, yeah, it's my channel, and, I can talk about anything I want to talk about. And I thought I would go and start today with this movie. So you've probably seen the title. I'm going to be talking today about the 2016 film by Tom Ford called Nocturnal Animals. When I say Nocturnal Animals, I mean it was a screenplay, I believe, that was written back in 1993. I'm not sure, but it was based off that story. And then when I say Tom Ford, I mean the fashion designer Tom Ford. Really, really remarkable man who's really kind of shaped a lot of culture in the world. And this film is rich with culture, rich with a look at so many things. There's so much to unpack in this film. And I was thinking the title of the film, Nocturnal Animals, is very much like myself. I've kind of... I don't really sleep anymore. So yes, I am recording this, and it's 4 a.m. on the dot. I have no notes. I just woke up, and you can probably hear it in my voice. I've got a cup of tea, so I do apologize if I'm a little bit croaky. And I just thought, why not just do a video explaining this film? I have seen it a couple of times, and I remember I was quite called to it when it came out that year. I was heavily working on my deck, and it was like JB Hi-Fi in the bargain bin. You could just get it for like $10 or something, and I hadn't seen it, and I thought, yeah, I could watch that. I could give that a go. And I remember watching it for the first time and just going, oh, fuck, like, there's so much in this. Like, I need to rewatch this again when I'm up for it. I didn't know what I was up for. So, spoiler alert, yes, I am going to be unpacking this film and sharing my thoughts about it. I'm also going to be sharing why it is so important, why this film is important to me, from an artist point of view, from a creative point of view, from a life point of view. There's so many different points of view that I share it from. So I hope that when I talk about it, I'm conveying that in this message, in this podcast. So that being said, if you haven't seen the film, please go and see the film. Go press pause, turn off this video. If you haven't seen the film, then don't. There's no use really, unless you don't want to watch the film or you don't have the time, and that's okay. Then you can hear me rabble on about it, as we say here in Australia, rabbiting on. But yeah, I can talk about it for you, tell you what happens and what it kind of means, or what it means to me. But if not, and you'd like to go see it, just watch the damn film. And you could probably get it on a streaming service, Netflix or Stan, Binge, Hulu, Amazon. I don't know. There's so many these days. So there's no excuses. These days, a lot of it's all downloadable content. And yeah. So I feel this film up front, before I get started, is probably one of the most underrated films. There will be another film that I'm going to be talking about called The Counselor, which was done by Ridley Scott. That was back in 2013. Another really underrated film. And when I say underrated, I feel Look, first of all, I'll just be honest, and I'm quite brutally honest in that regard. I don't sugarcoat anything, which is something that I've really learned about myself recently. It's very terrifying. I've noticed people are scared of me or they run from me if I say something. Maybe it's that Scorpio Sag side of me, which just kind of goes, bleh. Like, that's how I feel. And I don't soften the blow. But quite frankly, this film is so sophisticated and so smart and so well done with all of its symbology that, of course, it just went over the regular, what we would say, normie person's head. This is not a Marvel film, and so it's not some big explosive action blockbuster with like Thor or some shit like that. This is a psychological thriller that is really about a story that's taking place in a novel that's taking place in a story. So there's kind of two parallel stories or even three stories happening at one time. And so, it is very complex. There's so much to unpack. And I know I'm going to miss quite a bit of it, but from my observation, I'm just going to share what I felt from it while I was watching it. And I had a very visceral response to this film, as I will be sharing with some other films as well that I've also had very similar responses to. So let's talk about Nocturnal Animals. So Nocturnal Animals is a film about, if I could sum it up in a really simplistic way, it's about revenge, I guess you could say. It's about someone coming to terms with how they treated someone, their past, and how that impacted someone else. It is a reflection on American junk culture. So it's a look at the decay of Western culture, particularly in America. The film starts with some women that are morbidly obese, that are dressed up in kind of like very patriotic American clothing, or very little clothing, like little hats and streamers and stuff, and they're dancing, and we're kind of looking at it going, what the F is going on here? Like, what is this? And of course, it's a very striking way to pull the audience into the film, because it's just so obscure and we just don't understand the context of what this is. And of course, I think Tom would have done that deliberately to pull us in and get us interested in going, holy shit. So it starts off, the film really centers around a character called Susan, played by Amy Adams, and she does an incredible performance in this role. We really see her struggle with herself now as she is. She is an art gallery director, so I want to make this point clear before I start. She is not an artist. She only displays other people's art. And so I will come back to that in a minute. But she is displaying in her show, where the film starts, these women that are typically, for the most part, free. They are not bound by society's conventional codes of what a woman is supposed to look like, what they're supposed to wear. In a way, their abandonment of society's conformity and socialization to fit in is the freedom that these women have. And it's actually quite incredible, because I know most women look like that. Most women are not stick thin, and they're not on the cover of a magazine or, on Instagram as we would have it these days. Most women have scars. They have, natural parts of their body, which obviously after having a baby, it can change your body. So it's just a really raw and real, visceral entrance into the film, I think I could say. And she's having her exhibition. So these women are projected up on these screens, and they're dancing, and it's like an art gallery opening. So it's like she, in herself, the Susan character, is selling the freedom of someone else in the projection of that freedom, but yet she herself feels completely trapped in a life that is based on privilege and style and sophistication, but is really void of any empathy or love or compassion. Her life is cold. And she, working in this big art gallery, it's very minimal, it's very cold, it's very white, it's very stark. And the use of color in this film is off the charts. It's so well done. It's so perfectly styled, with all of the colors, the reds and the whites. And so she comes back from her opening of her show, which would have taken a lot of time to produce. By the way, the women that were in the video clips are placed on these kind of slabs in the gallery, kind of like, it's very detached and very kind of, it feels very uncomfortable. So they're all naked and they're laying on these slabs and people are obviously walking around. I think that Tom Ford was trying to project to us, the audience, that these women were they were the art installation. So they were like maybe they were meant to be molded clay or molds of the women that were in the video projections on the screen in the gallery. But Tom said, I did listen to Tom in an interview, and he said that they didn't have the budget to, make life scale models of these women. So they just had the women in real life, in real time, just lay there for 3 days while they filmed that scene, which is really quite incredible. And I think that, so it's just like looking at that there, I mean, there's this relationship that's happening where people are, the observation of something is part of the art. And I think that's what artists do. We observe things, we diarize things, we internalize things, and then we try and unpack that and make sense of that, which is what the art is. And the difference between something that is art, where it's telling you a story or it's conveying an emotion that is real, as opposed to something that just looks aesthetically pretty. So I kind of see it that way a little bit. And so she comes home, and the next day we find that she's in this big stylish house. It all appears to be, fabulous. She's got all this money and she's so wealthy, and, living in this kind of gated giant house that's kind of very LA-esque, I guess you could say, kind of separate from the riffraff kind of thing, think of Hollywood Hills kind of vibe, Mount Olympus vibe, where it's like, big houses with swimming pools and perfectly manicured grass and everything that modern society kind of tells us that we have to be successful. She is the epitome of that. But yet we find in the house is cold, and the color palette of the house is dark and blue and gray and empty. And her husband is really not interested in her work at all. He has no value. He doesn't place any value in her work. And you can see that their relationship is completely loveless. He doesn't give her any time, and he didn't even bother to come to her event the night before. And she says to him, it would have taken you 15 minutes. And he's just like, oh, look, I just got caught up or some shit. He's concerned about the projection of how he appears to others, but unbeknownst to others, they're actually struggling financially and they're in crippling debt, although they're making it up. It's kind of like that rich thing where it's like they're overemphasizing their importance and their financial status, but they don't really have the money to back it up. It's all just kind of for show. And I've definitely met people like that as well. They live off credit. They don't actually have equity. They just live off credit and just project a lifestyle that that is really not real. It's not real. So the film is already kind of showing us a balance between what is real and what is not real, and at the balance between having, how you can have all this money and have this house and have this stylish life that's very full of luxury and very lavish, but you don't have connection. If you don't have love and you don't have real people around you that are able to see you and place value in you, then you are completely alone. And I love that kind of analogy there. So she has almost like a butler type thing where her staff member, they have staff members that live in the house to help them out with, day-to-day things. And he says that a package arrives for her. And so she goes to open it and she gets a paper cut. She receives a paper cut on her finger as she's tearing the paper off the top of the package that whoever sent it to her. And it's kind of like a warning or a precursor for what's to come, like how deep this is going to cut. And it is a manuscript, and the title of the manuscript is a novel that her ex-husband from 20 years ago has sent her, and it is named Nocturnal Animals. And Tony was her ex-husband, and basically it is, I'm going to fast forward a little bit through this. Basically, the film begins to really start and show us his novel as she reads it is reenacted through the character of Tony that is played by Jake Gyllenhaal. And really, I'm just going to be really brutal with this. Like, it's basically about him and his daughter in the novel were driving along a road through Texas, and they were run off the road by a group of men. And basically, fast forward remote, in a really horrible and really violent and frightening way, his wife and his daughter are taken and they are raped and murdered brutally. And Tony befriends a retiring police officer called Bobby, and they try to convict the kind of hillbilly murderers, but they can't because they're having trouble because there's not enough evidence or whatever. And that's when Tony and Bobby, the police officer, decide that they're going to have to do it, the old-fashioned way. They're going to have to get revenge. And so a lot of violence ensues, and the story kind of starts from that. So that's really the premises of the story. So as we're watching the film, we are diving into this narrative that takes us inwards into Susan's interpretation of the story. And because it's been written by her ex-husband, she sees Tony as the person that she envisions the main character in his story, Nocturnal Animals, to be. And the film title, Nocturnal Animals, is what he used to call her, a nocturnal animal. And that he used to tell her that she had sad eyes. And then we get all these kind of flashbacks in her life where we see her relationship in context to how she treated him terribly. And this is where I feel the real heaviness of the story comes from, and why this film works so well is because Tony is more of a romantic, idealistic person that really follows his passion, and he's an artist, so he's very sensitive and very kind and very gentle. He's not the projection that Western society or society tells us a man should be, where they should be masculine, they should be tough, they should be alpha, they should be a go-getter. He's a dreamer, and he's just trying to support himself as a writer at the time. And we see the flashback with Susan really not believing in him as an artist. She doesn't really see value in his work, which is really crushing if you are an artist or you're trying to make something and you don't feel that people around you see that, and you don't feel that people can relate to that. Then it's all in your head, and I'm speaking from personal experience. Like, you've got this idea and you're trying to bring it out into the world, and you're very vulnerable. People are going to probably shit all over it. They're going to try and deconstruct it. And of course, one of the things that Susan says to Tony's character in the film is that you write about yourself too much. And this is a really interesting thing, is that all art is built on art, but all art is autobiographical. Tongue-tied. All art is autobiographical. autobiography. It's autobiography. Yeah, you know the word. My brain. I'm sorry. It's so early in the morning. I'm talking. It's autobiographical. So it's showing that all art, that when we write something, we're only writing from our own point of view. Because samples of our writing and our creation, we can only weave from what we are. We can only weave from our own perspective, and that's how we see the world. And so it's our way of using language to communicate what we see. So my art or Tony's art, whether it's writing or painting or drawing, it's just an extension of the voice that we have within us. You know, art is not created in some kind of like vacuum. Art comes from a place within you. It comes from somewhere inside of you. And so a lot of people that write from their own life. You know, what better place to write from than from your own experiences, you know, and you can also show us who you are. I've often thought that, you know, there is no extension, there is no disconnection between what the artist creates, because as artists, what we put out is an extension of us, you know. So, but you see, she didn't see it that way. And so Jake Gyllenhaal's character felt completely unseen. And when someone doesn't feel supported, they feel like they're fragmented and they don't feel that they can get connection. And, you know, that's one thing I will say just off this film. If you have someone around you that's trying to make something or trying to do something, just fucking support them, you know, just show up for them and be interested in what they're doing, you know. Because it takes a lot of courage to make something and create something and express yourself. You know, it's like jumping out of an aeroplane, and you've got to be quite vulnerable to do that, you know. But for a lot of people that are not artists, they, you know, they're not creating. They're just going to work and following a protocol, following a script, doing what they're told, you know, that kind of thing. Very similar to a DJ. I want to make a point here, is that a DJ is not an artist. A DJ is someone that plays someone else's music to elicit a response in a club. You know, they can mix the music up, they can play it in different orders, they can distort music, but they're distorting someone else's work. They're not making the work in the studio. So I know that might be offensive to some people that are listening to that, but that is the truth. And so real art is the real thing. It has to have something of meaning to it, and it has to come from a deep and specific place. So it's like pain can create something and then someone else takes it and then distorts it and markets it, which is exactly what Amy Adams's character does. She can't make art. She can't create art. She can only showcase someone else's art and then profit off that. Yeah, so I know that's, you know, pretty fucked up, but that's what a gallerist is, you know. I've had some terrible experiences with gallerists. But yeah, anyway, I won't go into that too much. Maybe I'll do a video talking about my experience in the art world. But this film is based in the art world, and that's why it's so relevant to society. So basically she never put much emphasis or support into Jake Gyllenhaal's character, and she really followed what her mother wanted for her. So she didn't really follow her heart. And that's a big part of the story, is that her character had a really tumultuous relationship with her mum, where her mother was like, Jake's character is not good enough for you. He's not rich enough. He's not alpha enough. He's weak. You know, you can do better. And so, you know, she kind of, what mother wanted for daughter is kind of what Susan did. She listened to her mother and she went against her own best interests. And she was even as cruel as that when she went through the divorce, we find out that she was actually cheating on him while she was married to him, and with the successful man that she's with now. So we see that the relationship is kind of fizzled out, and it's all just based on the aesthetic, and it's all based on the look. But the person that she cheated on Tony with, she's with now, and now he is cheating on her with another person. So it's kind of like that whole thing. It's like, how can you really trust to build a stable, loving, caring relationship with one person when they're in a relationship with someone else at one time? So it's like if they cheated on someone else to be with you, what makes you think that they're not going to cheat on you to be with someone else? ... I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's in their nature. And we know that the best prediction of future behavior is past behavior. And she knows that. So it's kind of like she shot herself in the foot. This film is about the relationship that a person would have when they have betrayed themselves based on their own illusions, their own greed. And that's exactly what Susan has done to herself. She chased a life that is pretentious. And in the art world, I mean, you can't get, in the fashion world and the art world, I mean, you can't get anything more ridiculous and more fake and phony and fucked up than that world. And that's the world that she went into. So we see a scene where she goes with her husband who's cheating on her, and he's got to rush back over to New York again because he's got a business deal to close, but she knows it's not true. He's just fucking someone who's younger and hotter than she is. And she goes to this party, and it's very swanky and very absurd and just just really like uppity. If you know some arty types, you'll know that it's like everything's like in our head is just too advanced for you to understand, kind of like condescending shit like that. You know the types I'm talking about. And so she goes to her friend at the party at their house, and of course it's got to all appear really nice and, you know, their relationship's well put together and stuff, but on the inside the relationship is completely disintegrating. And she's empty because her work, as she said it herself, is junk. She doesn't see value in her work because she knows she's not creating, she's only showcasing someone else's work. So it's kind of like she's got that imposter syndrome, you know. And so as she's talking to one of her friends at the party, one of her friends says to her, no, you shouldn't, you know, she says to her friend, well, I feel so ungrateful that I'm so unhappy, although I have all this stuff. It's like that thing that everything society told me to have, I got, but it just didn't make me happy. She's been trying to find things outside of herself to make herself inside happy. And, you know, by the way, it doesn't work. Been there, done that. I know that myself. And the woman says to her, it's all relevant. It's fine. And then as she looks across to her husband, he's gay. And she's like, what's it like having a marriage to a gay man? He's like, oh, you know, we make it work. I mean, it's just, it's just so fucked up. And it's like, rather than own the fact that she's got a husband that is a gay man that clearly wants to be with men and she's not a male, they still have the front of a relationship on the outside world to the public. Which, I mean, could you get any more crazy? But that's the dynamic, is that it's how it looks, you know. As they're talking later in that scene, the guy that, you know, the gay husband is kind of like, telling her how fabulous her work was and how wonderful her work was. And he makes a really distinctive comment to her, is that be grateful for the world that you're living in, because the outside world, the real world, is painful. So in a way, what he's saying there, I unpack in that moment, is that he is saying that he is aware that there is a far more primal and painful world outside there in the lower class. So we're talking class systems here now. So, and it's kind of like he's admitting to her that no one really likes what they do and everyone's just putting on a show. And he knows that, as he is too, because he's playing a character. He's not really being authentic and living his truth. He's putting on this show with his wife, which is not real. And of course, it's just the perfect thing to say to her character, because she's sitting there kind of questioning, like, what is real? So, yeah, it's a really, really interesting scene. Actually, one of my favorite scenes in the film is that she's supposed to be grateful for something, you know, that isn't, obviously has no integrity or heart. And so that's what's missing in her. You know, I can't stress that enough. That's what this film really is her coming to terms with the narrative of her life is fake. It's not real. So the film, as she goes back into the film and she's reading it, and I've told you what happens in the story a bit, in the novel, is that it's a very dark and frightening and very disturbing film. It feels uncertain to her. And Susan's, obviously Susan's life is filled with luxury, but she feels empty inside. So she's probably taking drugs, or she's probably trying to numb using a vice that she can go to try and, make herself get through her day by day. And as she's reading the film, she's starting to see what she fell in love with him about. So like, what was it about him? She's revisiting the past. And as she's reading his story, she's starting to really remember why she loved him so much. What was it about him that made her feel that way that she did? And then she's kind of going back and reliving how cruel she was to him, how she cheated on him, and even went as far as to have an abortion and get the guy that she was cheating on him with to go and have an abortion, which he found out about. And I think that's a really hardcore thing there as well, is that when you I'm not sure if I said Ed. I'm not sure if I was saying Tony before or Edward, but when Jake Gyllenhaal's character, I think it's Edward, but when Jake Gyllenhaal's character finds out that she's having an abortion, it's like her way of ridding herself of him completely, so there's no more ties to him after they break up. It cripples him, because to have a baby with someone is a really huge thing. You're going to build a life with this person. You're making life with someone. You're bringing life into the world. That's exactly what he wanted, and she didn't want that. So it's just really interesting, because what's happening now is she's starting to regret what she did to him, and she's starting to see the softer sides of him is actually who she should have stayed with. And she's basically getting guilt. And that's what this film is. It's a revenge film that is him making her see his worth. So it's like she never believed in him, and then he took what she did to him and then made pain from the pain that she gave him. He made art, and then he sends that back to her as a kind of fuck you to her. And then she reads it and then falls back in love with him again and remembers him and remembers how cruel she was to him. And the life that she took over the top of him and replaced him with has just led her to emptiness. But now she's feeling more than anything before, because she's got emotions for this book and for his ability and for him. So it's kind of like he is making her feel the way that she made him feel. Also in the film, there's a scene where she walks up all of these steps and she comes up to the top of a landing at the gallery, and there's basically just a giant big painting with the words revenge. And it's pretty obvious, it's pretty on the nose, to be honest, but it's pretty much saying like, that's what's going on here. This is about revenge. And I often think to myself, a big part of why I want to make art, or I make art, or I live this life as crazy and up and down and financially stressful as it can be, is that I have something inside of me that I need to say. And it's kind of like, yeah, it is. I personally feel, just off the subject of the film a little bit, is that it's the ultimate fuck you to anyone who didn't hire me, or didn't believe in me, or dumped me, or rejected me, or didn't see value in me. I think that we kind of use a little bit of the motivation of, hey, ha, 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 I'll prove you wrong kind of thing. And I feel very grounded in that, because that's what Jake's character is doing to Amy's character in the film a little bit. And then she's kind of coming to terms with that. Because there is nothing more painful than unrequited love, is to love someone who used to love you but doesn't love you anymore, or doesn't want you anymore. And now he's using the story and the characters in the story to make her feel that way. So when his wife and daughter are murdered brutally, that's what she made him feel when she had an abortion. So the symbology of family was destroyed in the story. That's the symbology of what she did to him. So during the chat, they have this ping pong email she's written to him saying, you know, thank you for sending me the copy of your manuscript. It's very, you know, hardcore. Would you be interested in catching up for a dinner date or just a date where they catch up? And of course, she has to choose some kind of really upper class, swanky restaurant kind of thing. And then we see a flashback to the scene where they'd first kind of re-met since after high school and uni in New York. And it was more of like a cozy, more kind of smaller, intimate restaurant that wasn't really focused on how fabulous the restaurant was. It was just a regular place that you could meet for coffee and have a real conversation at. There wasn't a performative element to the restaurant. But of course, she wants it to be performative now, re-meeting him. So she kind of psychs herself up. And, you know, also the color work in this film is really important. The scene where she finds out that his daughter and wife have been murdered is also their bodies were found on a red couch, and then the dissolves shot over across to Amy's character is that she's also sitting on a red couch. So the color palette, it's the way that Tom has shot the film. It really, each scene goes from dream sequence into memory sequence into the story sequence. It is hypnotic the way that it's shot, particularly in the scene. I won't give away the ending too much, but in the the end scene where she's in the bath, and of course the heartbeat, boom, 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 and his heart slowing down, and then she's under the water, perfectly done. I'm pretty sure this film would be studied, or at least should be looked at in film school, because it's just done so well. So the manuscript was really just a trap for her to face her regrets of her past, and really Susan was really wrong about him. She really was, and she was wrong about herself her whole life. And he makes her face this. He makes her face the emptiness of her life with regret. And then she realizes that she can't really take it all back. And Nocturnal Animals is really an essay or a chapter house about like her. And that's what it is. So yeah, I hope all of this is making sense. And Susan's, you know, she's impersonal and she's detached. And I mean, that's the thing, like as I've gotten older and I've met people in my life, if I meet someone and they're detached emotionally, it's unworkable. Like what can you do with that? What are you is it our job to try and get someone to emotionally attach to themselves? Like, emotions are key indicators to what the fuck is going on with us. So if we're not connected to our own emotional system, it's like temperature gauge. How do you regulate hot and cold if you're not connected? So how could you connect to someone else authentically if you're not connected? You know, that allegory there is pretty strong. But yeah, the cultural junk thing also comes up a lot in the film as well. Also, like, what is art? You know, it comes up a little bit. There's a scene where she looks into this glass cabinet at her gallery, and there's like a beast with all of these arrows jammed through it. Quite hardcore to look at, quite painful, but also kind of like a representation of the arrows that she's shot out to others, or maybe perhaps the arrows that have come back and got her, you know, kind of like karma. And it's really, as she's reading the story, it's kind of she's going through the motions where she's not sleeping. So I know this, I don't sleep well either these days, is that sometimes dreams in our head can play over into our subconscious mind. And there's a scene when one of her gallerists is talking to her and saying that she's got her baby in a crib, and she's got this kind of home camera security thing over the crib so she can check in on her daughter at any time. And as Amy Adams looks at it on the phone of the screen, she sees one of the hillbillies, one of the attackers around the baby crib, which was quite, you know, a shock value for her. It's showing that it's like the story that she's reading is really impacting her to a point where it's now plaguing her, it's haunting her. and she's kind of distorting herself a little bit, or it's distorting her a little bit. The regret and the guilt of what she did is coming back to haunt her. And there's a scene where they go in and sit down, and they're at this round table, and it's a gallery, like a modern contemporary gallery type vibe, and they're discussing whether they should keep one of their staff, whether they should let her go, or they should give her more time and give her a chance. And one of the staff says to her character, like, do you think we should keep her? And of course, everyone around the table is like, no, get rid of her, replace her, which is kind of like that American ideology, is that buy it, get it, upgrade it, replace it. Buy it, get it, upgrade it, replace it. Everyone is replaceable. So there's no emotional attachment to someone else's value. It's just using them and discarding them, which is kind of where modern culture has gone, consumer culture. And Amy kind of stops herself and is like, no, we need to give her more time. Sometimes it's not good to change things so quickly. And it's kind of like she's already starting to soften a little bit, and she's starting to see that she should have given him more time, and she should have given him a second chance rather than doing what she did. So the guilt of what she's done is impacting her. And listening to her say it like that, it kind of is... it's kind of like we kind of smile almost, because we can see that maybe her character does deserve to live in regret. There's a woman in the film as well that's sitting at the table with her, and I think it's Pam from True Blood, if you know that actress. I think her name is Kirsten Bauer, and she's had like all these surgeries done on her face, so her lips are all like big slug lips and like all distorted, her face. And it's just such a perfect like character when she looks across the table from her and looks at her, because it's like she's only the projection of what modern society wants her to be. That's why she's done that to herself. Like, that's the world that we're in. People have operations to look like other people. Like, I know it's fucked up, but that's what it is. Anyway, so fast forward remote, the story comes to its conclusion, and the revenge, obviously Jake Gyllenhaal's character in the story, he has to face what the perpetrators that have done what they've done to his family. One of them has since died in a robbery heist that went wrong, so he's dead, and they can't convict him or make him pay for his crimes. So all they can do is hunt down the other two men. And of course, it all kind of comes to a head where Jake Gyllenhaal's character has to step up and prove himself and prove to that he's not weak, that he's not what Amy's character said he was. And it goes the way that it goes. And then she kind of understands in the end what happens as all of this kind of unfolds. And basically I'm going to wrap this up. So she decides, she goes to dinner. He agrees on the dinner date. She goes to the swanky restaurant that I mentioned. And of course, he ghosts her. He stands her up. He doesn't show up. And she's sitting there and she's waiting and she's looking at the people and smiling and kind of, he'll be here soon kind of thing. But that hopelessness that he's not coming back is ultimately the revenge that he wanted on her for what she did to him. He needed her to see him. And I think that's the story, is that we take our pain and we transmute the pain and we make something out of it. Well, I do personally. That's why this film impacts me so greatly. Sometimes I often think if I wasn't in pain and I hadn't gone through all this stuff, shall we say, that I wouldn't be able to make art. And I think there's some truth in that. If I was happy, what could I do with that? So she waits and she waits and she starts having drinks. And as the scene unfolds, we begin to realize that he had no intention of coming to meet her. And that's ultimately one of the most painful things that you can go through. I was talking about it in one of my other videos recently, is that being ghosted by somebody consecutively or just being abandoned by someone is very, very damaging. And it's very dangerous to do that to someone, because it can really change them. It can really alter them, and it can make them quite monstrous. So yeah, success is the revenge that his character wanted on her character. And he got that. He made her believe in him again, but it was too late. And then he used the allegories or the metaphors that she'd done to him in the story back on her. And then revenge is a dish best served cold. He didn't show up. Bitter as it was, Susan just waited and waited and waited and thought that he would come, and it's not coming. And he'd already decided that he wasn't coming. And so that was really the ending of the story, ending of the scene. And it's her recognizing and realizing the injustice of the situation that she'd done, and coming to terms with the fact that she'd abandoned and aborted everything that she had with him, and that it all came back onto him in the end. So that it's a very hardcore, it's a lot of moralistic things going on. The symbology in the film is beautiful. Tom Ford obviously is a fashion director, so it's a lot to unpack in all of the color work and the symbology. I also noticed that she wears a green dress when she goes to meet Edward, and I kind of see green as hope. And she takes off her wedding ring as well, which is really interesting because she was once married to him, and then now she's got a new wedding ring to another man, and now she's taking off this wedding ring to meet the man that she like. It's really interesting. There's so much, like, I could unpack this film all day. And if you haven't seen the film, please go check it out. Leave some comments below. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Always, I'll read the comments. If you've seen Nocturnal Animals, this is my first kind of deep dive into me doing a little bit of a movie review, keeping my channel a little bit different, doing something a little bit obscure. It's been fun to unpack this film. I've enjoyed sitting here talking about Nocturnal Animals. Very, very underrated film, very complicated film. If you're going to give it a go, please come into it with an open mind and, try and enjoy it. I did very much so. I relate to it completely, and maybe success is the best revenge, but shouldn't we be doing that for ourselves, not for someone else? I don't know. This film opens up a lot of questions that could be explored in my life and your life. It's an interesting thing. So I would say, if you have someone that you love, treasure them and protect them and be there for them. And if they're trying to make something, just believe in them. It's so interesting. I've found that just a little bit of belief you can give someone can really, really, it's like helping the seed grow. It can grow into something beautiful, but when we don't see each other and we don't place value in each other, it's just nothing can happen, Well, I'll leave it here. That is my review, deep dive on my thoughts of Nocturnal Animals. So I will be coming back. My next video, I promised I was going to be doing one video a week. So promises made, promises kept. I will come back. Maybe I will do a video talking about another film that I've enjoyed. And I think I might do The Counselor next, but we'll see. So if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, please smash the subscribe button, leave a comment, thumbs up, share this with someone else who might be interested in what I talk about, and I will see you in the next podcast. Bye.